Okay, everyone, I want to welcome everyone back to a new episode with Coach Stephanie Romero. Okay, very excited to have Coach on here with the Ole Soccer podcast. I want to hear her story, how she started, what she's currently doing, what her plans are in the near future as well. So, a lot to get into this episode, but I want to definitely start off this Friday since it's being recorded on a great note. And this morning, especially learning, not only learning, but also getting to know who Coach Stephanie is as a person, right? Because I know players, other parents, when you're on the field, you don't recognize that coach is also a person. So we're going to dive into who Coach Stephanie is, why she does what she does, etc. So Coach Stephanie, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm doing good. And yourself?
Good. I'm good. I'm excited to have you on. Like I said before we started recording here. I want to get started right away, and I want to know a little bit more about you and about the game, and what it means to you, how it started. Like, let's start from the beginning. Where did this soccer crazy journey start for you?
I started when I was 8 years old. I'm from Apple Valley, California, so the high desert. And I started because of my brother. He's actually younger than I am, but I watched him playing. He was 4 and I was in gymnastics, and I was just like, no, I want to play. And the funny story was my dad was a little tentative of me playing, but my mom was the big pusher, like, no, let her go. If she's gonna get hurt, it is what it is. And then sure enough, I started at 8, recreational like anyone else, AYSO soccer. And then just fell in love with the game. I think I started as a keeper because my dad was a keeper, and then I became a center back and center mid throughout most of my entire rest of my career. I played for a local club called Apple Valley Storm in that area, which still exists to this day. And then my journey was funny. Like, throughout, I didn't have too much adversity growing up in the sport. I always got to start, I got to play. And then when I hit high school, I was also able to start as a freshman. But my senior year, I like either plateaued or like mentally went through things. And so I ended up not being a starter at that point and kind of rode the bench my senior year of high school. And back then, there's no Instagram, there's no social media. And my parents aren't, I'm also first generation on my end of my family. So the college roadmap was very new to me, very foreign. So when that happened, in my head, I was like, okay, after high school, I'm done. But I ended up getting recruited through a junior college programs, a few of them out of state. So I got to do some recruiting trips to Iowa. It's called Northwestern Junior College. And then I went to an NAIA program in Arkansas. But I ended up in Wyoming at a community college called Laramie County Community College. And I ended up on a full ride there because they provided boarding and the schooling for my 2 years there. So the way NCAA or NCJAA stands, so National College Junior Association, the way it works is that there's like 1, 2, 3 divisions, and that was on the Division 1 end. So that's why I was able to get scholarship money through them. And when I went to Wyoming, my whole world changed. I mean, we're talking diversity wise. It was a huge, huge cultural shift for me. Yeah. And then, being away from family was new for me. And then my college coach what he did great was a lot of international players. I got to play with a few Jamaican international national players. I did Brazilian national players and worked with some Japanese national players. Nice. That all went there older because of their roadmap's different, but they they helped change the vision of the game for me a lot because their passion is just on a whole nother level. And then their commitment and their discipline to what they're, not just their craft, but just their bodies themselves. It's like a huge level change. So I got my 2 years there, was able to start. While there, unfortunately, my freshman year of college, we lost a teammate to suicide. Oh, wow. It was, so I was 18, away from home. She was also 18 at the time. And it was one of the most, life-changing moments of my life. Like, it's still very vivid to this point. So I think for me, a big portion of helping others or paying attention to other people really shifted at that point. I was always pretty like conscious of other people, but that particular night like really shifted how I worked within the sport, because for me, my sport helped me like just get me out of certain zones. And in this case, it wasn't enough for this particular player and person. And obviously it changed a lot of our cultural shift. My coach lost 4 people that year to suicide, 2 on separate schools,
Wow.
like whole different, they had gone already to other schools in different scenarios. It was just a huge, and it was like back to back to back. It was this huge moment.
That's heavy.
So yeah, it was tough. And it was tough as an individual. And then it was always like you're looking at your coach who was, you know, he really strived and continues to strive to look towards character and role modeling, and just being that right type of person outside of the sport, you know, that the sport just give you life skills versus it being something you use, right? Yeah, so I think we learned a lot through him. And then as a team, we collectively got closer together, and we got to travel a lot of the country. I mean, I did most of my traveling through that school, like 21 states, just with that school. Yeah, it was very cool. He had a great program. He's retired now. This was his last year. His name is Jim Gardner. But through that program, I was able to go to an NCAA Division II program in West Virginia. Also, cultural shock, but I was used to it at that point. East Coast, slow mentality, like just so much different than California. Weather-wise, all different. And then finished my career there. So I did my junior and senior year of college there, and that was called Alderson Broaddus University. And with that program, also special moments, we were the first first team on that university to win conference and then make it to the NCAA Division II tournament. And then also just like some memories, learning with the coaches. One of the coaches now works at Cal State, Monterey Bay, as a coach there. So I think a lot of my love for the sport came with those that were around me, the mentors I ended up having with me that I had was unknown, because you're a kid at that time. You don't realize that these are mentors for you. But yeah, the way that they communicated the sport, the way they communicated their version of coaching, I was fortunate enough to be to take it in and then use that elsewhere. So I studied nursing throughout that whole entire time. My academic role was up and down on the daily, and both my coaches helped me through that. Because again, first generation, just kind of figuring it out throughout that whole entire time. And then also, I'm the oldest in my family. So I think the idea of asking people for help was kind of weird for me. It was just not something I wanted to do.
No,
and I had to learn the hard way. And I had to learn extremely the hard way. So the sport helped me navigate that. The people that were around me helped me navigate that. And then after college, I ended up back here in California, and I kind of took a break from the sport. I was like, my body was done. My dad had consistently wanted to push me towards coaching, and a part of me wanted to, but the other part of me was like, you don't see a lot of girl coaches out there as it is, especially then. And then I didn't see a roadmap towards like even, as a young adult, you're looking for financial space and financial freedom in some format. So I was like, I don't know, like, what am I going to do with this, I guess. So I did like an AYSO coaching thing with him for a year. And then that was fun because I had like, my little sister is 15 years difference than me. So she was 8. And so we coached her. And then after that, I took a break. I ended up here in Pasadena for work. And then while here, I was like, man, I miss the sport. I really enjoy it. But I want to give back, because I think a big part of the way that the world works here in United States, it's, someone like me was fortunate enough to go to college because the roadmap was kind of given to me, but it's not always given to people. And there's so much talent out there that their parents don't have the time. There's more information now, but parents don't have time. They're not in the right club informational system. Maybe they're giving money to things that they think is going to get them there, and they're not doing their job. So I remember I had just had the conversation with my roommate at the time, like, I'm going to find a way to give back, make it where it's not as much pay to play in format, or find just a way to be informational in one way or another, right? this was a small conversation I had with my roommate, and then we had to move homes, and where we ended up moving, they needed a mentor for their daughter at the time. It was to me, it's God sent, because I'm a person of faith, and I
Mhm.
was like, this is insane, because not what I had thought. So yes, slowly but surely I started training her. And that's kind of how Elevate started, was I
Mhm.
went through training her and helping her. She was an eighth grader at the time, now a senior. And word of mouth, they just started bringing other people towards me, and I started like just diving into it. And training was the most perfect way for me to start going back into soccer,
Mhm.
because when you're in coaching a club team, you're working with so many different dynamics,
Yeah.
not just the player,
Yeah.
but the parents, and then whatever else the club might have. So
Yeah.
I did 2.5 years of just training, full on training. And then around the time COVID hit, around that time, my husband and I got engaged. My now husband I got engaged, and he was from day one like super supportive. Like, you need to do this. This is your talent, your passion. Go for it. And so I stopped working full time at work, and I was able to start club soccer
Yeah.
training at that time. And at the time, I got an opportunity to work with Marshall High School as an assistant coach, which I was now allowed to through just being able to have time, not working full time at work. And then yeah, so now I'm here coaching two club teams, 2010 and a 2009. My own 9 team is one of my favorites right now, because they all are transferring from AYSO into club. So they're all brand new, and their eyes are just so eager to like be in this new transition. My
Yeah.
2010 team um, is my, like, I hold them close to my heart because they're like my first child. The first club team that I have, so I'm learning a lot through them.
Mhm.
And then Marshall High School, both myself and the head coach at the time, Erica, were first time at the time, and we were able to win CIF that
Wow.
year, Division 5 last year. So that's where I'm at now.
That's great.
And
No,
learning.
there's so much into that story that I really personally relate to. Um, and I really like, and I think it's important that more and more families hear these type of stories and understand that things aren't, just like we've seen that graph, like you're everybody's graph is different. It's not
Yeah,
just going up, some
no,
go down, some go up, especially when it comes to you understanding that, there's going to be commitment from your senior year to being recruited to traveling the whole country,
yeah,
etc. But I want to start off with ask you, 8 years old, your dad is iffy about you playing soccer, but your
yeah,
mom is the one that pushed you. That really stood out to me. Of all those things stood out, but
yeah.
I like the fact that your mom was encouraging and say, I don't know, maybe it's like, I don't know. I think it's the Latinos in us. Like maybe it's us like saying, you know what, maybe I want my daughter to have the opportunity that maybe I never had, or I was never pushed. Was it? How did you feel now as an
I
adult
mean,
looking back
so those
about?
roles ended up switching, right? In the beginning, it was my mom and pushing forward, and I think for her it was like, yeah, she needs activity, and let her
Okay.
do what, because she was, if I remember correctly, she was a big fan of basketball. But
Mhm.
she's from Guatemala, and at the time, she just could work at that point, and that's how she ended up here. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think a big part of it for her was like letting her have access to things that I'm not able to have access to. And you know both her and my dad have worked very hard their whole entire lives, and to have that ability to give to their daughter and their son at the same time, it's made
Yeah.
a lot more sense for her. And then as I got more passionate with the game, and my dad saw that I was like adventurous and rigorous in the sport, he was like my go-to man, like, let's do this, let's go at it. And
Mhm.
um yeah, so he became my number one fan throughout that whole entire time. My mom was just as much, but he was the one that taken me to practice, getting me like in there. I'm left-handed, but most of my coaches taught me right-footed, so he went back and practiced with me left-footed and got back to left-footed
Mm.
games. And then yeah, I mean, a lot of my knowledge really came through him and my uncle. My uncle lived with us at the time, and my knowledge of the game. And I think that was, so I'm not the most athletic. I was never the fastest, never the like most strongest, but man, my brain, my IQ of the game was on point. And I think that's how I ended up in center mid and center back for a long time. And I
Mhm.
just came from the people that are around me. My dad and my uncle really did a good job of explaining angles, explaining how to shift and move, and then at the same time not overcoach as a parent, right? Because you have to let the coach do what they need to do.
Mhm.
So I never felt extra pressure from their end growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's important when you have that support, because I'm sure you see it. I think everybody sees it here. I hope everyone sees it, that let's say there's a tryout, or let's say that there's a program that you're running, right? And I think this relates back to Elevate, which is very important. You get, let's say you have an open clinic or whatever it is, open to everybody. You get 100 boys and you get like 6 girls,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You get, you have a camp of 200 kids sign up, probably like 15% are girls, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then now you start to get into club level. Now we're seeing more girls at club level, etc. But generally speaking, how important it is for the household to encourage girls at a young age to try to play and encourage them, right? From your experience.
I think it's massively important. I also think it's important to just encourage them to play, not play in a not necessarily play in a structured format. And I
Yeah.
think that helped, right? Because
Yeah.
I would go play pickup with my dad and my uncle growing up, and that was just so unstructured, but it just
Yeah.
helped me enjoy the game, right?
Yeah.
It's so important to me that when I did for a big portion around before 2020 hit, so in 2019, one of my girls that I was training had gotten hurt, and so she needed to get herself back into rehab. So we ended up doing pickup soccer, like and I got a collective of 25 plus
Wow.
seventh graders to like 10th graders at the time to come and play, and they just got to enjoy it. The parents are watching, and just obviously some of them were videotaping and things like that, but there was no structure, so there was nothing that got too crazy. And then there was a point where I wanted to play again, obviously, so I did women pick up 5v5, and I would encourage some of my older kids to come play with me, and I created a team through just them. It wasn't really about winning at that point. It was just getting them to just like the sport, try things that they can't try on a daily basis on their team for whatever reason, whether it's in their own mind or the structure of the team is different.
Yeah.
So for me, it's extremely important because my value for the sport came from my own passion for it, which came through like just playing, right? Not,
Yeah, of course. It's not necessarily always the coaching. It's not necessarily always the, oh, because I play on this team, or I play with this coach, or I play.
Yeah.
No, I think it just comes down to growing the love for the sport, right? At a young age, and having those around you show you what that passion is as well, and I think to some it comes just naturally, maybe, I don't know, like I can't explain it, right? But to others, especially here, because I think it's there's so many other sports that are competing for your time. And I think girls, what I've noticed as well is like they want to do, parents push them to gymnastics or to other sports, which is fine as well. But it's like in other countries, like soccer first countries, it's like soccer,
Yeah.
like what gymnastics?
I would when I was
like soccer,
no,
go
yeah,
play on the street.
totally. When I was
Right?
12 years old, I got to go to Guatemala for my visit family. And there's the boys. I mean, all boys playing pickup. And there I go, playing pickup with them. And the little comments here and there, oh wow, you're good. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I can like yeah. Or like, oh, you're not scared. No, I'm okay. I'm all right, little things like that. But it was fun, just the lack of representation for me at that point was more, I didn't even recognize it because my dad consistently kept me involved. Once he like got on board with playing, just kept me involved in playing. So that helped. It's really important for the family to be involved because you're a kid and there's so many, especially now, so many distractions. Like you have your phone, you have social media, there's Roblox, there's all different types of things, right? I mean, and I think it's cool. And I tell this to my parents all the time, like the parents I get to talk to, if they see you doing something, they're still young, especially at a young age, they're more likely to be enticed to want to do it with you because they're still wanting your love, approval, all of that at that, especially at those ages. Your time. So for parents, it's so important to get yourself to be involved in some format. Even if you don't know the sport, just being out there, like hanging out with them is good for them.
Yeah. It's true. That's true. That's such a good point. And it's a great story. It's a great story because I think hopefully a lot of people will see things different and maybe just say, you know what, that's maybe like my kid, right? Or maybe I should try that, So that's awesome. So moving forward, like I want to ask you about like the mental side of your story when you were senior, because Like I had an interesting story in high school too, but talking about you, like the mental part of it through adversity that most kids, and I think teenagers, especially preteens and teenagers, don't understand. Life, right, is like you're gonna have to deal with adversity.
Yeah.
It's like this, just there's no way around it. This
Yeah.
is part of life, and the sooner that we I guess coaches and mentors and people around you, the support team, I guess to the best of ability, prepare them for adversity and know that it's going to come. It's going to come, right? And you dealt with it your senior year where you were on the bench, but then something great came out of that.
Yeah.
How important was your support team, or how did you find a way to get out of that senior funk, you could say?
Yeah, I think for me, one of my issues growing up as a in that portion was that, I'd look at it and I would value what someone else thought of me as
Mhm.
like truth, right? So once I thought that I was this bencher, then I was like, yeah, I guess it's true. So every time I go out there, I was more nervous to play, right? So
Mhm.
number one, I now I'm older and I'm thinking like, wow, their value of or their thought of me can change if I shift how I work as well, right? It doesn't count as the absolute truth at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was hard to understand that. My support was my parents at the time. My dad wasn't the type to be like, okay, Steph, we gotta go. Like, we should talk to him, but let's also we have to work through it. This isn't the end all be all kind of situation. If he won't change his mind, then be a supportive person on the bench. I'm gonna still be here for you. I still think you're a great soccer player, whether or not. And so he wasn't the type to make it seem like, and this is different. Every situation is a little different because I don't know if it was, some coaches are really out there to get players, and I don't think that was necessarily my case.
Mhm.
I just once I got on the bench, it became a moment of like every time I was out, it redefined to him why I should be on the bench because I was playing nervous, because I was playing scared at the time, right? So in my particular case, my dad was smart enough to tell me like, yeah, talk to your coach. But if you're not going to talk to him, nothing's going to change either. Like
Yeah.
it's up to you.
Yeah.
Like you got to
Yeah.
choose that. And
Yeah.
there were times I didn't. I just didn't talk to my coach because I was scared. I didn't know, right? But I always had in the back of my mind like, well, dad's right. If I don't talk, nothing's gonna happen, right?
Life skill. Yeah.
Yeah, huge life skill because sometimes parents want to do it for them, and because it's hard. Like my dad saw me cry, he saw me like
Mhm.
want to quit, the whole thing, right? Like
Yeah.
as a parent,
Yeah.
I can't imagine not wanting to be active in that role, right?
Mhm.
But he was um strong enough and smart enough at the time to recognize like, no, she's got to learn this because there's gonna be a point where I'm not gonna be around, and she's gonna,
Yeah.
yeah,
Parents not going to be there.
yeah, parents aren't gonna be there. So I went from being just a bencher at the beginning of the year to like a little more of an active role in the game, but never ended up fully starting. But going through that and having him not take over that role for me and for like doing it for me
Mhm.
and just letting me fail, because that was a failing moment,
Yeah.
not being able to talk to my coach or not being able to like overcome the idea that the value of someone else's truth isn't necessarily absolute truth,
Yeah.
was important for me to recognize by the time I went into college ball.
Mhm.
Because when the moment came to get recruited, that's when his active role became important, right? So I got these letters and I was like, this is a lie. Like, I'm not playing, no one thinks I'm good at, like, no one's good, this clearly can't be good, or this is like spam, right? And my dad's like, no, I've told you you're good, let's just go out there, see what happens,
Yeah.
just enjoy the game, like no one knows you out there, just enjoy it.
Mhm.
And yeah, sure enough, those words resonated enough for me that by the time I went to these recruiting trips, I played like if I had never been a bencher,
Took a
right? Like,
beat. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I was just playing, and little by little, I got these little offers, all the offers, and then one of the coaches in Iowa, where I almost ended up going to, he
Mhm.
talked to my dad, and he said, "Yeah, like I appreciate that you're not being, you know, you're letting her talk to me and talk to that, make this commitment because you're not going to be here later,
It's her
right?"
decision. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
her decision.
At the end of the
So
day. Yeah.
on the mental aspect of it, letting kids fail is so important because I failed. There was a portion of my life, my high school seasons, where I failed. I didn't like I told you earlier, I'm not the most athletic. running for me, not it. Like I was not the best one. Like it was
I can
not.
relate to that.
Oh my
I'm with
God.
you on
Like,
that.
and
Just
my
give me
my
a ball, like
oh,
just pass. Give me the ball to feet, please. Feet,
yes.
feet. I'm feet. You understand? Not space. You run into
Yeah.
space. I'll find you to
Or
feet.
like if I'm gonna run to the space, you already see me running into there, not like I'm chasing, right? So what happened my senior year or going into there, the assistant coach at the time was a big stickler on being in shape. And like her version of shape was like 2 mile runs,
Mm,
all those things that I was not going to like over like I tried, but it was just not in me, right? Like
yeah.
a 2 mile run at a certain time. And yeah, I mean, so all those things I didn't recognize as a younger person to be like, okay, this is what's being asked of me. How am I going to make the best out of it? Instead of being like, oh, I'm not good at it. Let's just not do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's a failing moment. That's a mental failing moment. And my dad let me go through that. My parents let me go through that. There were moments where they had to hug me, had to be there for me. Obviously, they second guessed their choice because where I went to high school at wasn't where it was a different district. We went there. So of course they second guessed moments of things for them, but they did to me a phenomenal job of letting me fail, letting that be part of my journey, and then being there when I almost was closing my own doors to opportunities, right? So these junior colleges opportunities, like my dad's like, no, you need to go for it. Because then at that time, especially then, everyone's vision was like, it's D1 or nothing, right? Like some version of that was in my head, right? And I was like, well, and I mean NCAA D1 or nothing. And he was smart enough at that point to be like, no, you like the sport. This can give us not only that, but this is going to give us a roadmap to college that we are not accessible to, yeah, because my parents are in this weird fend where I wasn't going to get necessarily grant money, or so it'd be, it was easier for me to get scholarship money than to just have to pay loans off of things. And yeah, I'm grateful for those like failing moments that they let me go through.
Yeah.
It hurt. I mean, it's something that I look back to and I'm like, man, if I would have just this, right? But like now I know, and I use that now with my youngers, with the kids that I work with now, because I can't necessarily educate, nor is it my job to necessarily educate all the time parents because they have a philosophy, but I can be a help for the kids being in those spaces, learn how to navigate and let themselves do it by themselves. You know what I mean?
That's powerful. No, thank you for sharing that. That's huge, because I think what you said is letting kids fail is a huge life skill.
Yeah.
And as parents, knowing when to pick them up and knowing, like we talk about, I've just been really diving into the last few years of like teaching kids and trying to teach my kids as well, the growth mindset, over fixed mindset.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's just
Massively.
so powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. So that was such an important thing you said, and your story I think is awesome. And I hope a lot of people resonate with that and appreciate that and can take something and maybe apply it into their own world. So
Yeah.
I want to get into explain to us Elevate Training. So you started Elevate Training. Tell us the mission behind it. Tell us why it was created and what you're doing with it, because it seems
Sure.
like this is moving in that direction through your story, which is awesome.
Yeah. So Elevate Training was born through just the want to kind of give back to the sport, give back in some format. But for me, it was always in my head to like help mentor players through roadmaps and parents through roadmaps, because I thought about my parents, and there was only one local club in my area and that's all I can go to. And financially, time wise, there was just unknown things that weren't being given to us. So in my head I was like, hey, when I'm training these players, it's not just about training their skill, but giving them access to opportunities that are out there, and helping educate the parents on what is capable for them as a player and as a parent, and how you can be of a help. So that's how it started. And it was more on the personal relationship end. My trainings are focused on technical ability and the IQ of the game, because for me, what saved me was my IQ of soccer than just the athleticism of it, which I feel like here in the United States athleticism is almost everything for a lot of people, and IQ is not talked to about as much. So yeah, I worked a lot more on the IQ, so I would help girls with the film, like let them, what do you see? How is that gonna move for you? Um, and then little by little and turned into like role modeling aspects. So a few of my, at the time, in the beginning, it was more of like, okay, they're small clubs, but their journey wants to go somewhere else. But if you all you can afford is a small club, and let's work really hard to be the best player you can,
Yeah.
and do the work, like email the coaches, get the highlight films that you need to get, because it's all up to you at the end of the day, not the club.
Yeah.
It's yours to do.
Yeah.
So that's what I talked with parents and talked with the players, and to this day I still do that. My goal moving forward, and the plan was for this year, but some things have shifted for me. So we are planning on working on a small academy for like middle school kids that are going from AYSO or recreational soccer into club soccer, and just
Okay.
helping them transition into it,
Yeah.
because that's such an important role, like age group.
Yeah.
That's that, like, especially for girls. There's a lot going on. Your hormones are changing at that time. Self-esteem, your self-autonomy wants at that time are changing. So there are these a few kids in AYSO or recreational soccer that want to try the next thing, but there's a mental shift that they're not ready for, or athleticism shift that they're not ready for. And what can happen is if that can kill the game for them, instead of that being like a lever into like moving harder, it can be the reason why they say like for me, my senior year, well, I'm not good enough. I'm just not going to do it. Right.
Sorry to cut you off. So what tools or what advice would you give to someone that has a daughter, or maybe a player that is around the age that's watching, that they can use to prepare them for anything, whether it is like you say, moving from recreational level to club, what mind shift needs to happen, or maybe it's you just moving into an uncomfortable position, or a position where, in life in general, where you're just like, oh, this is just a lot different than what I expected, that I don't know. So what tools can we give them to prepare for something like that?
So a parent tool, you give them the aspect of like, let's go be my husband has this favorite saying, like, you have to be uncomfortable being or you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And so let's get into an uncomfortable situation. Let's see what our the baseline looks like there, and then we'll create a plan on how we can get to that baseline if we're not there yet, or if we're at that baseline, how we're moving forward from that point. Right. That's number one for a parent. As a player, you have to remind yourself of a why. You have to give yourself a why. Why am I in the sport? Why am I doing this? Otherwise, there's no reason to be uncomfortable if you don't have a good why, right? Like your reasonable why. So
you have an easy exit plan, if you don't have a why.
Yeah, if your why is like, I want to be around my friends, then you need to put yourself in a good environment that's around people that you know, so that it's uncomfortable a little bit, but it's around your why. Because I mean, that's okay. At that age, it's okay that it's just about friends, right? Like, I just want to be around people that I like. But then eventually your why has to continually evolve. It's kind of that growth mindset, like you just mentioned, like that's huge. Like it has to continually change. So as a player, find your why, find your reason why you're doing this. And then afterwards, you have to own the good and the bad of who you are, right? Like as a player, if the good is I'm determined, I'm going to keep going, but the failing part is, the bad part is like, my touch is off, I'm not as fast as everyone else is. Own both parts, like fully own it and grow them from that aspect. But if you don't want to own it, then it's hard to move forward, right? In anything, but own it and be like, hey, you know what? I'm not good at my touch, but coach, I'm going to go work with X, Y, and Z person, or I'm going to work with my friend and we're going to get our touch better this way. But if you own it, then you can have a plan. But if you don't own, then there's no plan. Those are my big tools.
That's excellent. That's excellent advice. And how important is it for a coach that maybe, or a mentor, or somebody that, let's say, in this situation, that they can reach out to, like yourself, to provide some tools that they can do on their own, maybe at home? How important is that?
It's super important. So with the girls I do on Elevate training, I try to do as much training that is more home based. So things that they can do at home, maybe not a lot of crazy equipment that they can do. And then I have them do journaling. So at the end of the night, they'll like write down your 2 favorite drills and then do these at home, so that you can come back. And because I remind them, like 1 hour a week is not going to change anything in any realm. Nor is your practice at practice going to change anything at realm. It has to come from your active participation. So I encourage on the Elevate end the active participation. With my kids on my club team, we just started a new program where it's like a workout program, and they're being given every day. So they have to like do this every day. It's 15-20 minutes, but I'm helping them learn time management, because right now also the big part is they're in school. There's some of them are doing junior high soccer plus club soccer at the time. So I'm like, give me 20 minutes, find a way. There's no way you can't find 20 minutes in your day.
Yeah.
I know you can find 20 minutes, get this done. And they're only allowed 24 hours of the day before that workout plan is committed, is done. They can no longer go back to it. And I'm tracking that. So giving them a structured form to be able to do things outside of home, because they're still learning how to time manage. They're still learning how to be disciplined as an adult. Like, you have to recognize that. That way it helps them. You're giving them the tools. Now they have to do the choice whether or not they're going to do it or not. And for us on my end, it's a consequence. Like, if you're not going to do it, there's a possibility you're just not going to be on this team, because I want players that are wanting to fix what they own, what they have, and they're being given these tools. Because it's unfortunate, sometimes players don't go above and beyond because they don't know how to. They're not given the tools. Or there's sometimes players don't go above and beyond because they simply don't like the sport. And that's okay.
Exactly.
That's okay. You just have to know that. And the parent has to be okay with that too.
Yeah.
Because it's an age group where there's no reason to go through like trials and valleys if it's not something that you're gonna like learn from, right? Like, you're really gonna embrace and take growth from. Valleys and trials are absolutely important, but it's when it's being done for the things that are going to get you better, not
just
your
why.
Your why. Yeah,
Absolutely. That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. And then your Elevate training, is it done virtual? Is it done only in person? What are your training models? What do they look like?
Right now it's just in person. In 2020 I did some virtuals, but right now person. So Monday through Thursday I do Elevate trainings, and some hour blocks. And then our goal is to be able to go eventually into some virtual mentorship perspectives, where maybe it's not on the training side, but more film session side, or like mental, like how do I time manage things? How do I get things,
very important,
all that portion out. So that's a big part of where I'm taking Elevate, is not just soccer related, as in technical, tactical, but the mental aspect of the game as I'm learning it.
What about maybe an online course?
Yeah, I'm working towards those.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would definitely be part of that. I want to learn. That's so cool.
Growing. I'm learning as I'm going, so it's,
of course we all are, right?
Yeah. And I think that's important for the kids to see that role modeling. And I let them know that, like, hey, I had this plan, but it's not really working out as great as I wanted to. So we're going to reshift, and
pivot.
And they hear it that way. They can model that, it's important that kids model healthy growth, right? Healthy versions.
That's a good point, because I think I've been guilty of this, where I need everything to be very good, and I want them to know, like, the players to know that I have all the answers. But at times, like, I was trying to like listen to podcasts and just ask questions from other people, and I'm like, sometimes the best leaders also need to show their human side and be like, you know what, I don't know that yet.
Yeah.
You know what, or maybe I don't have the answer to that, or you know what, I made a mistake, and I made a mistake. And then last time I said that in practice or a game or something like that, and then my team, because I have a 2010 girls team too, and they're like, oh, coach doesn't know the answer. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, and I told them, like, yeah, I don't. And I was like, sometimes you may have the answer that I don't know, and that's okay. Or maybe I don't know, but I want to know.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, okay. And then they thought, like, they stayed quiet for like a second, and then they just moved to something else.
Yeah.
But, like, me,
and they might, like, that's the thing. Like, I think as an adult, you have to recognize that they're not going to get it right off. Like, that you role modeling that is not going to, like, they'll see it, but they're not going to react from it right off the bat. But later on, I mean, I know, because I was that kid, right? Like, later on, they're going to look at them and be like, oh yeah, that's why I felt a little more safer to make the mistake, because he was modeling mistakes already. They're not recognizing and putting these pieces together at that time, but they're little by little doing these foundational pieces that matter when they're older.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I think, like you're saying, it's just like laying down that foundation, putting like brick after brick of that mental training that's so important for kids in general, but I think it's even more important for girls, right?
I think for me as a coach, as I've been learning, so I've been in coaching now in just 2.5 years of team coaching. But so I've learned a lot in these 2.5 years, because I think as a girl, there's an ability to learn how to discipline and hold people accountable without being um condescending, right? And I didn't know how to teeter totter that very well. So in the
Mhm.
beginning, I wasn't holding the kids as accountable as I needed to.
Yeah.
And I realized the importance
Mhm.
in that, because if you don't hold them accountable, they're gonna go as far as you don't let them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether they're trying to do that on purpose or not is beside the point. Like, we have to
Mhm.
hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember having this conversation with the kids, like, look, our lack of focus starts with me. I have not held you guys accountable for this. And so now it starts with me, and I'm going to hold you guys accountable for it. But it was a mistake I owned. And I told them that, like, I'm
Yeah.
owning this, and not a mistake, but it's a learning moment for me.
Yeah.
So you guys are going to learn with me, and we're going to continue to learn together. Because,
That's a great
and,
point.
and, and the same thing I told the parents. And
Mm.
it's, with kids, it's easier because they're like what you just said, like they thought about, and they're like, okay, well, back to whatever we were doing, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
with parents, it's a little harder because they want the best for their kids, as they should.
Yeah.
And sometimes being a part of someone that's growing, even though they don't even realize that they're maybe be growing at the same time,
Mhm.
it's hard to have a conversation with. But it's okay. You got to own it. You got to be all right with it. And
Yeah.
those that want to be part of that journey are going to be a part of the
They'll
journey.
they'll be there. And
And
those
it's
that
hard.
don't,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
And
They
that's
should be somewhere
it's
else. And I mean,
yeah.
I think that's something I've always told parents when I've come around, both with my trainings and with the clubs game, where you have to do what's best for your child, and your needs, and one of my favorite quotes is um everyone's a genius, but a fish that's climbing a tree will look stupid. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I think about that, like, hey, if the environment doesn't fit your player, and if I don't fit that player, that's fine. Like,
It's
that's
okay.
why there's so many different kinds of coaches, why there's so many different types of philosophies out there.
Yeah.
Find what fits your kid and you, because you're a big part of their growth.
Yeah.
It's important, and I had to learn that, and I continually learn that, and something my husband has to hear from me all the time, like, because there's moments where I'm like, oh, I don't get it, and then he reminds me of that whole entire shift. So really
Yeah.
important that you have a good support system behind you, as a
Support
coach, as a
system.
player, as a parent, all of it. Your village is
Person. As a person, of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
Starts with that. It's very important. Good advice. Good advice. I was gonna ask you about leadership, and how you let's talk from a team perspective, right? For
Mhm.
you as a coach, you as a leader for your team, how do you instill more leadership opportunities for your players? We were talking about it briefly through messages, exercise that I've done, and I'm trying to learn and get better at, and you were explaining some as well. So I want to actually talk and provide some more tools for the people watching on what exercise they can do and what do you do.
Yeah, so like with my team, one of the things I have them do is they learn the warm up, and so everyone, um a new set of 3 players will always start the warm up, and I'm not there. They'll just do the warm up. I'm watching, but they're the ones going through it, and then those that know it better help each other out, because I think for me, a part of leadership is, when you don't know, having the people collaboration is part of leadership, right?
Mhm.
So that's one of the ways and tools I've worked with the team, is that aspect. For games, I do a little poster board for them about like topics that we want to hit throughout that game, what's important, like a focus of that game. And they'll go through that by themselves. They read it by themselves. They get together by themselves and kind of talk about it. And then they'll come back with me and we'll break it down even more. And then they'll ask the questions, or if they have questions. I try to prompt questions if it's like quiet, and then those are my 2 big tools. And so giving them self autonomy in leadership. And then the second, as they're growing, self autonomy is learning how to communicate in a way that doesn't communicate with each other. Because some people might take a word that you say incorrectly,
Yeah.
or as a divisive, so we'll pause, and sometimes we'll take pauses at practice where I'll be like, okay, I like the way that I know what you're trying to say there, but you see how that could have came out, like, it didn't really come up with the result, so let's maybe word it a little different, right? And they work on that a little bit more. So right now I'm part of a Nike program called Coaches in Your Corner, and it's a mental leadership program for coaches that
Mhm.
work with female sports. And that came through football for her, and why I work with Shauna Palmer. And so she gave me the opportunity to have that. So they're coming up with tools on how to create leadership. And that leadership aspect is, yeah, open-ended questions, having a routine in the beginning and end that they do, that they create, that they lead. And then here and there, maybe help the word is slipping my mind, but like turn around the focus so or that they're maybe doing a better version, like they're learning a different way of saying what they're looking for. But again, it goes back to that, like letting them do it the way they think they're supposed to do it. Maybe it's the right way, maybe it's the wrong way, and then helping them redirect them into what is the right way, right? As an adult, you obviously know that, but you have to give that. And sometimes, like we talked about in messaging, like sometimes it fails. Sometimes it's a big, like, it
That's
is,
okay.
it's a big lesson, but that's okay because they have to learn that.
But why do you think that is? Because do you think it's because of the coaches always want to be in control and want things perfect, like we talked about, or
Yeah, I mean, part of
what?
that is in control. The other part is, and I'm going to speak for this, I could be speaking a little wrong, but this generation, a lot of things are already roadmapped for them. Like they know how to do
Predetermined
the
almost.
phone, all of that. So being given creativity is new. It's just a new perspective for them. So I think a big part of that is that lack of creativity early on in life and going into it, because I mean, they're, and it's okay. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. It just we have to recognize it. Like laptops, cell phones, how they play their games are all roadmap for them. It's told how they're supposed to do it. So of course, when you're given this self-autonomy, like,
What do I
it's,
do?
yeah,
What
wait,
do I
what?
do?
I'm
Oh
supposed
my
to
God,
think?
what?
You want me to
What?
think for me?
Like
Like,
I have to do it by myself? I have to
yeah,
work with others?
yeah. And
Yeah,
I
that's
think we
funny.
see that as a younger kids, so if we can instill that early on in sport, which is why in sports is so important,
So
and why
important.
it shouldn't be as so structured all the time, because everything else around them is structured right now. It's just so structured. So, and we only get great people through creativity and these moments of like haws that, like, oh, I just thought of that, no one else thought of that, moments. So creating spaces that allow creativity and allowing them to work their brains, even though you know what you're supposed to do, it's hard because you have to let go of control sometimes. And as an adult, you're looking at it and you're like, this looks so unstructured. Parents are probably looking at me like they don't know what they're doing. But you have to be okay with that, because the unstructured will create this amazing mindset and these like things that they don't even know that they're thinking about. So yeah, that's what I think the big tool is, allowing creativity, whether it succeeds or fails, and then refocusing it and redirecting it
Yeah.
into how it's going to be successful.
So important. Yeah. Giving players the space to lead themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So important. I've really tried that, and it's taken me a long time, because again, I feel like it's so controlling over the environment, where I'm like, you know what? If we're not actually teaching life skills, what's the point? If
Yeah.
it's just soccer, not everybody's going to be a pro.
Right.
Like very, 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 very few are actually going to make it, or even want to make it a career.
Want
But
to.
we get to the point where, like, us as coaches, like, oh, we got to have this team, we got to compete here, we got to go somewhere. But what we're missing out on actually impacting the human.
Right. Which is why
Right?
I think my story, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like for
No,
me,
of course. Go
I
ahead.
go back to my whys all the time for that, because my coaches did that. Enough of my coaches did enough of that to like, give me enough life skills. I am the leader I am today. Like, I was able to do what I am today because throughout life, with outside of my parents, like I was modeled and or given these environments to be that space, right? And so I always contribute. That's why I love the sport, not just
Mhm.
because of soccer, because of course I love being out there defending all that aspect, but it's the little things like knowing how to talk to someone, knowing how to communicate or
Yeah.
direct, or like being okay to be in a new space with new people, because like, hey, I can collaborate. I've collaborated before. But that all comes from being under people
Yeah.
that had that in their minds, right? Because I'm only successful now through the people that were able to
They
cultivate
put
that.
the human first.
Yeah.
Right, and that's so important. That's something I'm still learning,
Yeah.
something I still. And we met in person, because we
Yeah.
socially we connect on the ground, right?
Yeah.
But we met in person at the APFC Heads Up Vest
Yeah.
Summit in December, and I was so happy to see you there. But I'm so also kind of I don't know what the word is, but it's like I want to see more female coaches out there, right? Because
Yeah.
I
So
think you were probably like one of maybe two
two. Yeah, I think it
two
was
out
two.
there. You and
Yeah.
I think Joe's wife Lauren. I think you two were the only females there, right?
Yeah.
That were their coaches, and then there's like 30 other coaches. So what can you do, or what tips do you recommend for females that want to get into the coaching scene, or people that are thinking about it? What advice would you give to them that, we can create more female coaches that are
Yeah.
so important,
That's
for
so great. I didn't grow up with any women coach. I don't think I had a woman coach until my college, and she was an assistant coach.
mm,
And then that was it until college. And she was a great like help. You just being there because she knew girls, right? So then again, the lack of me starting early in coaching was the lack of representation. Like in my head, we're
mm,
not out there. When I got my first license, I ended up in the Spanish course. And then I was the only female in that Spanish course, like the only one of these 40 Latino men. Like it was so interesting. It was fun, but it was like awkward, right? And I've gotten the trippiest thing ever since I've started Elevate and got myself involved with the female aspect of the game.
mm,
I'm fortunate enough to I coach the college or the high school team now with another female coach.
mm,
My assistant coach for one of my teams is a female coach, so I've only coached with females now, which is so new to me, but it's great because it's a whole new perspective, right? So I think the soccer community is so small, right? Like it's just so tiny. So once you see another like female in that sport, like talk to them, communicate with them, have some conversation, because they've probably gone through something very similar to you, and or their why for doing this is probably really close to your own why
mm,
as a female coach. And then my younger kids, so I have a few high schoolers. What I've done with them, and this also goes back to leadership, is I have them come out to my 2009s and 2010 teams, and they help coach these teams.
wow,
And those kids get to see them, so now they'll never know. To them, being a coach will be normal because they're seeing their high school kids or
yeah,
high school counterparts come
yeah,
and coach them, right? And for the high school kids, they're seeing the impact of these little kids because, like this year, one of my high school kids is a senior. So for her senior night, a majority of my team went and watched her and supported her and like
wow.
looked at her, and they love when she's around. Some of them only come to practice for her. Like I promise it's for that. Like, but it's cool to like that's a leadership role for her, and then they get to see why it's important to learn leadership skills because they can be that later
Yeah,
on, right? So even with my 09s and 10s, I'm already kind of developing that idea of like you already coach, like you know enough to coach something else, right? So like with youngers of them, I'll be like, hey, look at those 2012s, they're looking at you guys,
mm,
and they're developing those skills. So to be for a young adults that are in the game or want to be in the game, yeah, connect yourself with someone older, connect yourself. Google is such a big format of like, where is there women forums, where is there these conversations happening, and just dive in, be comfortable being uncomfortable a little bit,
yeah,
and then cultivate that with those that are in your sport. If you're only working with females, like in my case, I do mostly girl soccer. Yeah, I try to cultivate that in them because I would love for one of them to know that it's normal to be a part of this journey. Had I known this earlier on, I would have done this earlier on.
so important. Yeah,
Um,
the work you're doing is phenomenal because
yeah,
you're giving young female leaders space to be leaders.
yeah.
Oh, it's so important. Can someone come out and maybe reach out to you and maybe join you in your program, whether they want to learn to coach, um, and just shadow you? Like how can someone connect
Yeah,
with you
absolutely.
to learn from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can always contact me at my Instagram and or my email address is a good version of that.
Which is what?
Um, my email address is s.romero@elevatesoccer.com.
Okay.
So you can find me there, or you can reach me on my Instagram. Um,
And I'll share this as well on the notes as
yeah, I
well.
can't remember my Instagram handle at the moment, but you can either find me at Elevate Soccer
There you go.
underscore trainings,
We'll add it.
or my personal one is okay too. So that one, either or.
Oh, that'd be
I
great.
my assistant coach and I So she's awesome. Laura coaches the men's team for Glendale Community College, and she's been doing that for 6-7 years. But our goal, or longer, she's been there a long time, but head coaching, I think 6-7 years. And then our goal, we were just talking about this, would be cool to get a forum or a community like once a month, like check in with nothing but like female coaches, right? And just kind of get to know each other and connect. So if anyone that's out there wants to like connect
Yeah.
that way, we would love to start something like that because it's important. There's just not
Create
enough
a
of us out there.
Slack group or something, you know?
Yeah,
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 that's great. That's a great idea. And I hope that, definitely take action, because I think once you put it out there and you take action towards something, you're gonna attract those
yeah,
female leaders. You're gonna attract those leaders in general, just want to be part of that.
yeah.
I think that's a key thing that you're doing. So thank you so much. I know we're wrapping up here, but it's been a fun conversation and great stories. I've really appreciated your time. For as we wrap up, uh, what is one book that you would recommend to either a parent, a coach, a player, anything? Doesn't need to be soccer related, just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
one book that you would recommend to someone.
It's called Mental, I have it here, Mental Mind Work. And then I don't know the author. Let me look it up. But
It's okay. You could send it to me and I'll put it in the
yeah, I'll
notes.
send it. That one's a good book. I think that's a good one on just getting your mental shift going and working.
Mhm.
And then podcasts I like to listen to is there's one out there that's called Alpha Girl Confidence.
Mhm.
So she's her name's Shay, and she does things on more confidence and based
That's great.
podcasts.
I think sharing those resources, I think, are great,
Yeah,
because you just never know who's going to be watching that, come across that. I had no idea that that book was out there, or that podcast was out there, or
yeah,
that space is out there where somebody's creating it, and you just that's what it's about.
yeah. I mean, reading's important. I think listening to listening to those types of things is so good for your mind. And reshifting it, right? Because we're all learning from each other. So important.
Absolutely. And then the last quote. Thank you so much. The last quote, do you want to leave us with?
Oh yeah, the one I already told you. Like everyone's
Say
a
it again.
genius, but a fish out of water is gonna look stupid. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah. So never really put everybody in the
Cannot.
same category, the same group. Like, it's just the human
Yeah.
being is it's knowing who you have, and not judging everybody by the same maybe rules or characteristics is so important.
And
So
valuing, like value that, to me, that quote relates to when you think that you're doing something wrong, like check yourself, check your environment, check if everything is allowing you to have your best growth before you commit to that
there you go.
statement for you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Any other leaving or lasting impressions you want to leave on anybody? Any last advice before we close
No,
it
I mean,
out?
I'm just really grateful for this opportunity. I appreciate it very much. And yeah, I think telling your story is so important, guys. So whoever's out there, tell your story, let it known. It's new for me, but it's important to have it out there, and dive into the uncomfortable. It works out. It works out.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate the advice. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great. I wish you lots of success this year with Elevate Training, with your high school, with your
Thank
club
you.
teams. And like I said, I really want to get you out soon to our team training to get
Yeah.
you out there. I know we're working on it. So
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah.
we'll have you out soon.
Sounds great. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you again for your time. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye bye.